Hello, everyone. My name is Raul Cuevas. Today I'll be discussing the First Amendment, selective incorporation, the constitutional scrutiny test, and several important Supreme Court cases involving freedom of religion, speech, press, and assembly. These cases show how constitutional rights are protected and how courts balance those rights against governmental interests. I'll begin with the scrutiny test and selective incorporation, then review important Supreme Court cases involving religion, speech, the press, and assembly, and explain why each case is significant. Courts use scrutiny tests to determine whether a law violates constitutional rights. Rational basis is the lowest level and only requires a legitimate government purpose. Intermediate scrutiny requires an important government interest and a substantial relationship to that goal. As far as for strict scrutiny, that is the highest level and requires a compelling government interest using the least restrictive means. The higher the scrutiny, the harder it is for the government to justify the law. A simple way to remember the three levels is a traffic light. For example, green represents rational basis because the government gets the most flexibility. As far as for yellow, that represents intermediate scrutiny because courts take a closer look. And red represents strict scrutiny because the government faces the highest level of review. The First Amendment protects freedoms of religion, speech, press, and assembly. Originally, these protections only applied to the federal government, but throughout selective incorporation under the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court extended many of these protections to the state governments. As a result, states must also respect First Amendment rights. So in this court case, Sherbert versus Berner, Adele Sherbert was denied unemployment benefits because she refused to work on her Sabbath. The Supreme Court ruled in her favor, finding the government placed a substantial burden on her religious practice. This case showed that religious freedom includes the ability to practice one's beliefs without unnecessary government interference. In the court case Lemon versus Kurtzman, the Supreme Court examined government funding for religious schools. The court ruled the programs were unconstitutional and created the Lemon test. The test asks whether a law has a secular purpose, avoids advancing religion, and prevents excessive government involvement with religion. This case reinforced the separation of church and state. In the court case in Oregon versus Smith, two members of the Native American Church were denied unemployment benefits after using peyote during a religious ceremony. The Supreme Court ruled that generally applicable laws can be enforced even if they affect religious practices. This decision later led to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. In Gitlow versus New York, the Supreme Court upheld Gitlow's conviction but established an important principle. The court ruled that freedom of speech is a fundamental right protected from state infringement through the 14th Amendment. This case became a major step in selective incorporation. In the court case of Brandenburg versus Ohio, the Supreme Court ruled that speech is protected unless it is intended and likely to incite imminent lawless action. This case established one of the strongest protections for free speech and remains an important First Amendment decision today. In New York Times versus Sullivan, the Supreme Court created the actual malice standard for defamation claims involving public officials. Public officials must prove a statement was made knowingly false or with reckless disregard for the truth. This decision protects the press and supports open debate on public issues. The First Amendment protects the rights to peacefully assemble. Governments may impose reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions as long as they are content neutral and applied equally. So what this does is allows people to express their views while also protecting public safety and order, which kind of reminds me of the current situation in the city that I work in. There's been a lot of protests against the data centers, and one night some of the people got out of hand, and we had to tell them that they needed to step back and not because they were trying to rush into the city hall when we were getting ready to leave. So that because of that, we had to come back, stay there, make sure everything was peaceful, and that they didn't try to attack the city hall members. And yeah, we ended up working till close to midnight that night. So, in conclusion, the First Amendment protects fundamental freedoms involving religion, speech, the press, and assembly. The scrutiny test and selective incorporation helps courts evaluate and protect these rights. The Supreme Court cases discussed today continue to shape the constitutional freedom that we enjoy, and I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation.